Have you checked out VanillaSoft? It's a sales engagement platform, but what does that mean, right? Well, it means that you can stop your sales reps from cherry-picking leads. It means they'll make more than just 2 or 3 contact attempts. It means you could potentially triple your sales pipeline. Check it out at vanillasoft.com.
Tenbound, the world's leading research and advisory firm 100% focused and dedicated to sales development, is now announcing the Tenbound Sales Development Conference 2020. This year, we'll welcome over 750 of the top minds in sales development to 2 major conferences, the New York City Leadership Conference on June 18th and the San Francisco Multitrack Conference on August 17th. Join us at both and learn from the best in sales development in these one-day experiences. Gain the latest intelligence from the Tenbound analyst team, unparalleled training opportunities, and networking with the leaders in our industry at the Tenbound Sales Development Conference 2020. Go to tenbound.com/conference to learn more. That's tenbound.com/conference.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sales Development Podcast. I am super excited, hot topic right now, and I'm excited to get the next guest on the show and dive into this. Mr. TJ Macke, SVP of Strategy at Sapper Consulting. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Happy to be here with you.
Thank you for coming on. I've been a big fan of the content and the company and everything you guys have been doing, and I was excited to get you on the show. If folks aren't familiar with Sapper yet, which is ridiculous, but tell us about tell us about your background, how you got into this, and what you guys are working on.
Yeah, well, I'll tell the Sapper story first. So, company's been around going on 6 years now. Started out as kind of a boutique outsourced demand gen firm, focused really heavily on content creation, writing really quirky, witty emails. And over the last several years, the company has been very successful, grown very, very fast, been on the Inc. 500 list the last 2 years, working on a third. And all of that has been focused on helping companies get more meetings and run better outbound, and primarily doing it for them or enabling their teams to do it better themselves. And so, yeah, that's been the focus of the company. My background is kind of wide varied. I've done a lot of different things in the past. I ran and opened a coffee shop. I was a pastor for a brief period of time in my life. I had an eye mask company. I've done a lot of different things, but the last 5 years have been focused on Sapper and helping them grow from a little baby company. I was like number 5, 6, up until now. We've got a team of 110 people and 650 customers, and feeling really very proud of what we've been able to build.
Wow, that is amazing. Back in the day, it was like you had to stay at one company for for several years. I mean, it seems so antiquated now, but it's like having a lot of different experiences is so useful and so much more interesting. You don't get locked into something. How did you decide to go into the business world after such a wide variety of experiences?
I liked starting new things. It's always been something like when people had a wild idea or somebody had a friend that wanted to start a business, they'd always come to me. And so even though that wasn't my background, it's just been the way my brain works. And I'd kind of written myself off, didn't get a business degree. I got a humanities degree that I use daily. And anyways, it worked out where a good friend of mine also joined Sapper early on and was like, hey, you're creative. We need somebody to help write content and manage our accounts. Like, you should come and think about it. And one thing led to another. And I joined really early on as a frontline team member, writing content, managing accounts, and, spent the last several years growing the core services part of the business, overseeing that team. And then, over the last year and a half, moving to a strategy, new business development role. So a lot of new for me, but in a lot of ways tied to just my love for creating new things, starting new projects, and getting to meet amazing people.
It's amazing. I mean, I think that it's such a different world. When I started, back in my day. When I started in the corporate world like 20 years ago, which is ridiculous, it was like, you were very almost like a straitjacket. And now it just seems like you can make a living while trying to find what is that niche that I'm really good at and I enjoy doing. There's just so many more opportunities now, than it just, 10, 20 years ago, it seems.
And I think it's good because I think one of the struggles you saw, if you want to say it with the earlier generations, is this pressure to either find the perfect shoe or to walk around miserable your whole life. And I think the benefit that's come from this flexibility, employment, whatever it is that it lets people kind of off the hook in that mindset, and it encourages them to try a lot of different things. Go work in sales for 2 years. Go work in, services for 2 years. Go, spend a year overseas. It's not going to be, there was a lot of pressure of cultivating your resume and, not working too tangentially. And I think there's a lot more room for that. And it lets people find where they shine, and so 5-10 years into your career, you can find yourself in a very different role that somehow you've been building towards the whole time.
Yeah, it's amazing. And a lot of people that listen to this are trying sales development or even the managers, and people that have been in their career for a while, they're still looking for that, that passion or that fire in their career, that'll spark them. And, it's amazing that now, it is available, and it's not as like, and still people look at resumes and they're like, it's a job hopper. Job hopper is still like a bad word. But, I think people should look twice at those, because, you bring in a wide variety of skills if you've got a background like that. And look at what happened to you. I mean, you happen to find the right people. It's a good market and a company that you can, exercise that. And now you're super successful.
I am so grateful, because I know that that's the reality of, the space is changing a lot, but it hasn't changed totally. And there are a lot of folks that are, experimenting and trying out careers and, in some positions being penalized for it. And I think that, there are still going to be roles that you need to have somebody with, maybe a really technical background that's put in a lot of time doing one specific thing. But I think that's less and less the case these days. And so I think
100%.
there's a lot of room. Yeah.
I like your analogy of like, you either find exactly the right shoes or you're completely screwed for the rest of your career. That's not the case.
It's not.
It's interesting too, with the philosophy that you had when you came into Sapper of like, we're going to throw the messaging curveball. Like it's because B2B, messaging is so boring and people are just, fed up with millions of boring messages that they're getting. So how did you come up with that idea of like, hey, we're going to make this funny, or we're going to try something new?
Well, I wish that, I could tell you like the story of like, well, we had this strategy meeting and after 8 days and lots of, chow mein, we came up with the brilliant idea. And it's, it's a lot, it's a lot less. Right? It's unfortunately a little more stumble into great fortune. I'll give you the quick origin story. So Jeff Winters, CEO of Sapper Consulting, him and his brother Jim founded the company. And how that got started was that Jeff in his mid-20s got the break of a lifetime and was hired on to be the CRO of this up-and-coming hot Midwest, and I don't know if that's an oxymoron, a hot Midwest startup. But anyways, he got brought on and felt like he'd spent years in sales and felt like he'd finally found his moment to shine. And he gets in the door to the company and they let him know, hey, Jeff, very excited to have you. Just a couple notes as you finish signing your paperwork. One, the product is still in development. It's not been officially released or completed. We've never sold it before, though we're very confident in our price point. And yes, you do need to continue only selling to Fortune 100 HR leaders. And it was in that moment that Jeff realized that he was the one that had gotten duped. Anyways, so he spends the next 9 months banging his head against the wall, maybe unsurprisingly not getting the results that he would want. And in a moment of desperation, he starts sending these quirky, funky, funny, witty emails at like 2:00 in the morning to these like the VP of HR for like Wells Fargo and Netflix and these large tech forward companies. And he gets replies. And over the course of like 3 months, I think he said like 72 meetings. And he gets to these meetings and they all kind of go the same way. Like, Jeff, really excited to hear about your product, blah, blah, blah. But I brought in my VP of sales because we want to know how the hell you got this meeting. Because no offense, but people like you don't meet with people like us. And it kind of kicked off a bunch of conversations, and a couple of people even asked to, train their team and do a little bit of consulting. And he kind of realized, like, I'm in the wrong space. I could be making way more money helping people get meetings with people that are having a hard time. And that was the impetus of Sapper Consulting. So he wrangled his brother Jim and, a few of us early on, and we started coming up with how to think about writing the way we talked about it, the perfect email to the perfect person at the perfect time. And how we do that has changed a lot over the last several years, but that has been the ethos behind it. And it's been a really fun journey figuring that out.
Wow. Okay. I'm writing that down. So perfect email, perfect person, perfect time. Dude, that is the dream right there of
That's a dream.
all sales development. So, okay. So, wow, that would be amazing. So how do you do that? Because there's such an emphasis on volume, in the business. Like you got to talk, call like 100 people a day and send out 500 emails and all this stuff. But if you're spraying and praying like that, how do you just send the perfect email to the perfect person at the right time? Perfect time.
Yeah. Let me give a couple disclaimers and then I'll share some thoughts. So first disclaimer when I'm having this conversation with somebody is that like your market segment is like your magnetic north. So if you are in, if you're selling to Fortune 100 HR executives, then your universe of options is vastly different than if you're selling to, HR managers with companies at least 5 people. Like those are just different. Those are different worlds. You're going to need different things to happen and your options are going to be different. And that might sound really obvious, but if I say something in the next 5 minutes, somebody's like, no, what are you talking about? You can't not use the phone. It's like, it's all vertical and market specific. So that's one thing. Yes. The next thing I would say, what's the sauce behind the perfect person at the perfect time? I think it would really come back to, at least our approach is start with your buyer. As maybe people are like rolling their eyes, like, of course you start with your buyer, but really like start with your buyer and try to physically write out on a board. Like we still do this when, we have counts that stump us. Write out on the board everything you know about them. Like, what are the channels they use? Like, what are the problems they have? Like, it sounds very prototypical, but like if you actually go through the work of writing it out, you will find your best approach kind of happen before your eyes. And I think the problem is that a lot of people start with, well, I have a telephone and I have an email account, so that's going to be it. Like I'm going to do 2 phone calls and 2 emails and that's it. And I think, one of the right moves we made early on was really focusing on the buyer and building off of, where does director of IT spend their time? Do they answer their phone? And then we go and do some research and try to figure it out.
Okay. And then, so a lot of people might have, the basic information written down. It's like, okay, we know that we can sell to these companies of this size, and these are the 3 or 4 people that are involved in the decision making. Mm-hmm. But then they kind of stop at that point. And then they're like, okay, I got a phone and an email. Let's go.
Yep.
So how do you take it deeper than that? I mean, it's like, instead of just sawing away, like how do you sharpen the saw more before you move forward with just doing a bunch of stuff?
Yeah, it's the right question. So I think there's like an ideal answer and then there's, reality. And so the ideal answer is that you are able to cultivate, when I talked about, drawing something out of the board, you're really able to do a lot of research. And this takes time. And I think this is, if I think about like things that I see teams do that add to later heartache, it's the fact that they don't take the time to do the research about their buyers. So let's say that they know, here's the group of titles and, we've always done, cold calling with 1 to 2 email follow-ups. I'm just throwing that out there. They tend to just roll with that rather than saying like, all right, well, where does this person work? Like starting at that. Do they work in an office? Do they work in a cubicle? Are they in the field? Do they have a cell phone? Like what is this person going to be doing when you call them? Like, are they going to be working on somebody's dishwasher? Are they going to be in a meeting? Do they spend a lot of time at a desk? And it sounds kind of silly, but like when you actually go through this,
true.
Like I work with people all the time and they're like, yeah, we're cold calling refrigerator repairman. And I'm like, what do you want them to do? And they're like, well, we want to get on the phone.
Give us some money.
Yeah. And I'm like, they spend, 7 out of their 8 hours in the field. What are they going to do? Answer the phone underneath the, the stove or the refrigerator? And so I think people just can put the cart before the horse when it comes to knowing the supplemental information that then drives some of the strategy. So I would say do research. Like there's never been as much information online as there is today about buyers. And so go and do research, find out, read articles, listen to podcasts, and see what you can find out. And then once you have that information, then that's really when the strategy starts. It's like figure out what your environment is, and then you get to start going into the strategy, and you get to start figuring out, great, so I know my channel. So now what's the content going to be? What's the cadence of events going to look like? What is the angle? One of the things that we use a lot at Sapper is disc profile. Personality profiles, like they can be a little too wide varying, but we found that disc profiles are a great proxy for communication techniques. And so we use that to drive a lot of the flavor behind our content, our messaging.
Okay. So I got a bunch of questions. So but you can boil down, if you kind of get a readout on who you're going to be calling, then you can say generally those people are this disc profile. So let's build our, messaging around that.
That's exactly right. Okay. And I think that comes back to like a strong appreciation for buyer personas. That's one of the early things we did well. And it's now, that's the basis for our Reggie tool. And I can share more about that later. But, the idea is that your buyer persona is going to drive your strategy. It's going to say, this is the kind of person, these are the kind of tactics I should use. And ultimately, this is the kind of content strategy and messaging I should be using.
Most people refer to VanillaSoft as the solution. It's the solution to ensure sales reps make the right number of attempts for every lead across all channels, including email, social, and the phone. It's the solution to serve the rep the next best lead every single time. You need to get your solution at vanillasoft.com.
Got it. Okay, so it's really doubling down on that. So if somebody buys into this strategy and they've got headcount for 3 SDRs, for example, that they can bring in-house. Should they make one person just be doing research and then one person just be doing the content and then one person do the actual outreach? Or can one person, I know if it's like a startup and you only have one person, then they got to do everything. But if you have headcount for 3, should you divide the work out? Because it seems like a completely different type of personality for that.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. It is very different work. I'm a big fan of segmented roles. So I think that we all have natural bents. And even if you have 4 SDRs, chances are those 4 SDRs are going to have different inclinations and strengths and weaknesses. And especially if you know that on the front end, you can hire for those rather than just stumble upon them. I think the question, though, of whether or not you can fully build out, like one person's job is to just do research, is kind of a question of like how many like campaigns, sequences, cadences, whatever your tool is, how many of your campaigns are you going to be making on a regular basis? How many buyer personas do you have? So if you're a company that if you sell light bulbs, and you sell light bulbs to 2 different people, you got a facilities manager and a director of operations. It doesn't matter how many SDRs you have, you don't need somebody that's, doing full-time research because you really have 1 or 2 campaigns and you're just going to have lots of variations of those. But if you are a large software company that has, 10 different business units, and each business unit has its own unique set of upsells and cross-sells and complexities, then you probably need more than one person. You probably need a research team that is, digging into your buyer, the evolving landscape, understanding how buyer personas in the procurement process are different from the sales process, and all of these different things that have to be factored into, designing the perfect email to the perfect person at the perfect time.
It's amazing how people still look at sales development very one-dimensional, and they don't put a lot of time into it. But I mean, what you're describing is a completely different org chart than most sales development teams.
Yeah. And I think there's some companies out there doing it really well. And I think we're just early. I think that there's still a lot of companies that are able to get by without having this kind of distribution of work and pre-work. But I am of the opinion, and we can talk about this or skip over it, but I'm of the opinion that those days are flying behind us. Prospecting is getting harder. Sales is getting harder and just evolving. It's just becoming different. And so I think that this is going to become less optional and more of the table stakes.
This is the modern approach. So let me ask you, if someone's out there and they're just like, oh man, we've been trying this. TJ is going through all this stuff. I just don't even want to deal with this. I want to just outsource my sales development program. Or I'm trying to come up with a better word, but I need some help. Yeah. And I don't want to hire all these people and do all this stuff. what are the 2 or 3 things that you would recommend in preparing they should prepare to work with you so that they're more successful, in that initiative?
Well, a couple things I would say. I mean, we work with folks, we help out folks that have a very strong motion and understanding. Maybe they've got a dedicated team already and we're just supplementing. They've got some big number they got to hit or they need some extra muscle, and we can come in and help. And if that's the case, chances are they've got enough for us to work with, and we can just jump in and say, hey, this could be better, and here's some of our research, and here's some tactics and some training, and it makes the whole thing sing. If somebody's new or has, kind of struggled, the entire time, maybe they don't have a team at all, or maybe just one person, then it really comes back to us having a conversation about, what you're offering, starting even behind your buyer, like what are you selling, and making sure that we're really tight on our understanding and our language. We use a lot of the, can you tell it to me like I'm 5? There's no shame in it. It's, the best messaging could be understood by a 5-year-old. So we try to use that a lot. And then, then we just talk about your buyer. And this is a lot of the work that we do for our clients. People come to us because they need help, and most of the time they don't know where to start. So there's not a ton that they have to come to the table with, but I would say if you are looking to get help, whether it's with Sapper or somebody else, know who your buyer is, know what you're bringing to the table to sell. And then it's really helpful if you know your space. So if you know, for instance, that, you've been prospecting for 10 years and you only ever get, great results by following up on conferences, well, then let's build everything that we do on making sure that, the 4 conferences you go to each year are just super high impact versus doing some brute force campaign and hoping for the best.
Right. That has nothing to do with what is actually working. So
Right.
Let me ask you this. So say they're working with you and or they're thinking about working with you, and they are evaluating, you versus like 3 other outsourced companies. How should they go about doing that? I mean, obviously they should just hire you. I mean, that's
I mean, I'm a little biased.
But say they're setting up, like, you got to do your due diligence. Like, you got to talk to at least 3 or 4 companies and then make a decision. So how should they structure that investigation of these different companies?
Yeah, and just for the record, I prefer it when people have done their research, because if it's your first time and you haven't talked to anybody else, your expectations might be unrealistic. So it's actually going to help me out by you talking to other folks in the space and knowing this is kind of what the bar looks like. But I would say in general, like, find out how long the company's been around. If it's a really new company that hasn't been around very long, no shame on that. We all had to get started somewhere, but they may be built around, a certain sales method or a certain prospecting method that may not be sustainable or is resilient. So, making sure that they've had a little bit of tenure, doesn't have to be super long. Know what they measure and make sure it's the same thing you want to measure. So if somebody's like, yeah, we're going to help you out with prospecting, we're going to be an outsourced demand gen team or whatever it is, and if you're looking for sales meetings and they're like, yeah, we're going to send you impressions, we're going to send you Facebook likes. That's, you got to make sure you're focused on the right thing and the same thing. And then I think it's just understanding the stack that they're going to use and making sure that it's like a modern sales stack. So, if they've hired, a guy named Jim in a basement to just manually send emails and phone calls on your behalf, that's fine. I'm sure Jim's great.
Jim's a great guy.
Jim's a great guy. Listen, he works really hard. Thank God for LinkedIn. But I think it's better to make sure that, you're working with a company that's, sourcing their data really thoughtfully, that they're managing that really well, and not just from compliance reasons, but too, just for, efficiency of your campaign. They're using automation tools, and you could say that that's not my problem. That's the company's problem. But I would say that it will have downstream effects on you, if they're not using efficient processes and taking advantage of modern tools.
100%. I mean, that's the key. And unpacking that, have your questions ready and make sure that they are on point and they're a match with you. So say now they're working with you they're working with a different company and they're like, okay, we're 3 months into it. This company is not performing well. Like they're not sending me what I need and I'm not getting good communication and stuff like that. Like, what should they do in that case?
I mean, there's kind of like a technical question of like, did they get out of their contract? How long did they sign on? Like, what does that look like? And then there's the more like, how can I make this great? Because I would encourage anybody that's 3 months into a campaign that, unless you've seen some gross misuse of process, they probably haven't tried everything yet. And so I would encourage anybody that at the 3-month mark, even if it's, with our biggest competitors, stick in there, give it another month. I feel like at least 4 to 6 months is kind of the sweet spot for, if you're pros, you know what you're doing, you might need a couple months to really dial the campaigns in, especially because follow-ups often, get sent out over the course of a month or 6 weeks. So anyways, I would say the thing that I would bring to the table is, making sure that you're sharing with them all the information. I think we've had some clients of ours stumble in the past because they've really wanted maybe to focus on a specific business unit or about it in this way and kind of give us the handcuffs. And that's fine. But, when the results don't perform and we have a candid conversation about it, and then the response is, oh gosh, well, we could have done any one of these things. Make sure you're being forthright about, this is something new. This is an experiment. We've never sold this product, whatever that is. Keep all your options on the table. Make sure you've got a real partner on the other end of that.
That's the key word. It's a partnership, because I think, a lot of companies, like I said, bringing it back, it's like, they don't want the sausage making, they don't want to know, they just want to eat the hot dog. I don't know what the analogy is, but it's just like, dude, I don't even want to deal with this anymore. Here's my ideal customer profile. Here's my personas. Here's some scripts that didn't work for us, but here you go. And just pump out, fill up my calendar, TJ,
Yes.
And it's like that. If you have that attitude, I feel like, and, working with our clients, it's like, you're definitely going to fail working with a company like yours. So,
yeah, I think that you've got to be partner minded. You got to be thinking how can these people be a part of my team? And I would say, maybe the last note on that is just that, because in the end, you should be working to take this over. I'm of the opinion, and this is our business. This is our space that, our most successful clients should eventually outgrow us. They should have enough leads, enough revenue, enough pipeline, and enough understanding of how we've done it that they eventually are going to take this on themselves. And, maybe you're in a business or a place that, you don't want to use that for some advantageous reason. But I think for the most part, folks are going to want to eventually grow into this themselves and take on the sphere of excellence. And so, you need to be working with a partner that empowers that rather than holds that back.
100%. And I can tell you, some of the highest performing companies that are out there, they always have both going at the same time. So they've got a great in-house team that's just crushing it. And they've got, maybe sometimes 2 or 3 companies like yours that are,
100%.
It's fully integrated. It's a great partnership. There's great communication. I mean, that's the way to go. Question for you, tools. We just put out the new market map for sales development, and it's getting crazy right now.
It gets just bigger and bigger and bigger. It's nuts.
It's crazy. What is the underrepresented tool that's I don't want to give away all your secrets, but is there okay, obviously if somebody's already got Sapper, they've already got Reggie, are there any other ones that you're just okay, we couldn't live without this?
Oh gosh, we keep it pretty simple. What are some of the underrated ones that people can't live without? I'm a big fan of some of the one-to-one video tools that have come out, and I feel like those are kind of underrated, and I feel like often they're used poorly. So Drift Video, they have a great, and BombBomb's another one. There's a couple of them out there. I'm personally a big fan of Drift Video. And I think that in the right tactics, in the right follow-up circumstance with enough personalization, but it's still short, one-to-one video done from a mobile device is that's the next thing. So LinkedIn has been really big for the last 2 years. I think it's going to continue to be really big. And I think making sure you've got tools that empower your team to be on LinkedIn, to be social, not just sending DMs. But that's something everybody knows. And I would say, so maybe the thing that's underrated is one-to-one mobile video. I think that is going to be a bigger and bigger resource for the future.
Yeah, I can tell you also, if you're out there, if you're good looking and you're not making videos, man, you are leaving so much money on the table. I mean,
oh my God,
I can't do it because my face is not quite there, TJ. But somebody like you, man, I'd be making videos all day, because
listen, I've always said, Dave, you've got a face for radio. So listen, you're doing your calling, man. You're doing your calling.
That's why we don't turn the cameras on for this podcast. But if you're some young, good looking dude and, you're especially, I don't know. People still, I don't know where I'm going with this, but people still, judge a book by its cover to some extent. So it's like, hey, if you're good looking and you're not leveraging video, then I'm saying you're leaving money on the table. And I think people are pretty shy about it, man. There's not, and you're also opening yourself up to, criticism, because I know that on LinkedIn, I spend way too much time on LinkedIn. Everybody knows if they follow me, I'm like, all I do is like things all day. But if you're on LinkedIn and you post a bunch of videos, you're going to get haters.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, dude, stop posting videos of yourself. But, you got to deal with haters, man.
Yeah. People don't like that. People don't like, and I get it. It doesn't feel good to have people heckling you or disagreeing with you in a really public way, or, whatever those are. But I would say that they always, those uncomfortable interactions are fewer than you would think. And they always are outweighed by the good benefits, the exposure, the excitement, and even the relationship building. I've shared videos back and forth with people I've never met, but it feels like, we could go and have a 3-hour dinner together. And I think video is a hack for building relationship in a time where that can be hard to do.
Yeah, there's so many things. Because we're talking about, like, if you're an SDR or you're running an SDR team, using like special video that you just send to that right person at the right time that has a great message. And so that is awesome. Everybody should be doing that if it fits for your industry, right? Like you said. But there's also like the whole social phenomenon of, taping videos of yourself, like walking through a neighborhood, giving sales tips and stuff like that. And so that's a double-edged sword. Because you want to be out there, exposing yourself and building new relationships. And there's going to be a lot of people that like it. But then I think it's hard for people to push out of their comfort zone and start doing that, because you will get haters. Like, you will get random people who go, dude, shut up,
Yeah.
So.
It's true. It's totally true. And I think maybe to zoom out here, like, I think that this is like a universal principle that, like, you're going to write emails and you're going to send it to somebody who's like, dude, pound sand, like, never email me again. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't continue. Your job may depend on you being able to continue doing it. But I think it does come back to, it's a great reminder of, like, kind of that first idea of, like, make sure you're doing the right motion for your audience. Yes. Make sure that you have a sense of, am I doing this at the right time? Am I doing this? Does this fit my buyer persona? Because if I'm sending videos, one-to-one videos to refrigerator repairmen,
right.
They may be
getting be like, totally, you're a jackass.
You're a jackass. I work for a living. What are you doing? Sending me videos? Jeez.
Yeah, but if you're calling on marketers who are hip and, you've got a nice, I think people get caught up on, like, the production value, because they're like, you know what I mean? It's like, yes. I just have, but really, your phone has probably a pretty good camera. And as long as you get a decent background, or your computer, you can make a pretty good video.
Yeah, I think that it's, the perfect is the enemy of the good kind of a situation. And that everybody wants to get started, but they way overvalue the importance of the small details. And not that those things aren't, I'm a big fan of aesthetics. I want things to look good and be well curated and all that stuff. But a done video is still better than, a half-made, never finished, perfect video. It's the same thing with email. Ship it. That's it, man. That's it.
And, there's one quick tool that I just found out about that's pretty cool. It's called Marco Polo. And it's for, like, within your company. And, instead of sending an email to somebody or doing Slack, you just go on, you record a quick video and you send it to somebody else in the company. I think Slack should buy, hey, you heard it here first. Slack should buy Marco Polo, because it's a perfect thing. And so you could just, it's a little bit more personal and, like, team building than, just sending a Slack message. And they can watch, you don't have to be, like, live, on it. You can just watch it anytime. So again, if you're good looking and
how to win friends and influence people.
Right. Get a good looking face and go for it. But anyways, TJ, dude, this has been so much fun. I learned a ton, and, outsourcing or getting some help with sales development is a huge hot topic right now.
Yeah.
And I just see your business continuing to grow, and you got a great attitude about it. So thanks for sharing your secret nuggets with us and coming on the show.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me. It's been a pleasure to share.
And if people want to get in touch with you, Sapper Consulting, Reggie, what's the best way to connect?
So you can reach out to our team directly from the sapperconsulting.com website. And then you can also book time directly with me for the time being if you go to reggie.io. So feel free to reach out. Would love to hear from folks, share what we're up to, and of course, help people get better at what we do.
I love it. And how do you spell reggie.io? I'll put it in the comments. Yeah.
Yeah. REGIE.io. Yep.
Got it.
Reggie.
Okay. So we'll put Sapper and Reggie in the comments, and then let's definitely connect. So thanks again for coming on the Sales Development Podcast and joining our audience. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Development Podcast, the only audio forum 100% focused and dedicated to sales development, with your host, David Delaney. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube and take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes. Your support makes our show possible. If you are struggling with your sales development program, contact us at tenbound.com for a no-obligation exploratory call. Again, that's tenbound.com.